Hello all. Yeah, we are back with the second lecture, lecture number 2, geotechnical engineering. Okay, if you are joining new, so this is my profile. I'm Pilisham Sundar. Done my MTech at IIT Madras. Currently working in PMC Coimbatore and have got 4 years of experience. And this is a gate training which is initiated by TechUFI. Okay, let's move on with the lecture. So today we are going to see soil structure and clay minerals. So in the previous class we have covered what is soil and how the soil is formed, right? So we'll see what is soil structure. So the soil structure means how the particles are arranged one with the other. So generally we observe these four kinds of structures. So first one is single grain structure observed in gravels and sands. Then honeycomb structure, which will be generally seen in silts. And then the last two structures are observed in clay. Okay, we'll see what are these uh, structures, right, of all the soils. So this is a single grain structure. If you observe here, this is a single grain structure. So this is observed generally when the particle size is 0.075 mm. That means particles has to be sands and gravels, right? So this 0.075 mm is the demarcation between the fine grain and coarse grain soils. So particles having more size than this are coarse grain. I mean sands and gravels, right? And here the thing is the gravitation forces are more predominant than the surface forces. There will be two kinds of forces on the particle. So if this particle is there, then there will be some weight, its own weight acting in the downward direction. There will be some attraction force by the other particles surrounding it, right? So those are the two forces. But here the gravitation force, its own weight is more, so it will try to move down, and the surface forces are lesser, so they will be broken. Like while the soil particle moves down, it will push the other soil particles in its way, and it will go down as much as it can, right? So that's why this kind of formation happens. Now, if you see at this structure, which is honeycomb structure. Now here the surface forces are predominant, right? So what happens is this is the soil particle I'm looking at. So it has to come all the way from here to here and here. So now it has to go down. If the gravitational force is predominant, then it will go down and these particles will be pushed this way. They'll be readjusted. But now here the surface forces, attraction forces are more. So this particle will attract this soil particle, and also this particle will attract the soil particle. So it will stay in here instead of going down. So there will be kind of loop formed, right? So the same way here also one more loop will be formed. So the soil's particles will be arranged in kind of loops. This is what we call honeycomb structure. Now if you observe from here to here, the thing is here more space is vacant, you know. So the voids gap between the soil particles is more in here. Yeah. So this is what honeycomb structure generally observed in silts and rock floor. Rock floor means it's also kind of soil which is of very small size, but it doesn't have plasticity, right? Although the size is lesser, it doesn't have plasticity. We'll talk about that rock floor later. Okay, let's move on. So these are the other two structures which will be observed in clays. Now, if you look at the clay, clay particles are generally kind of flaky. They looks like a sheet, right? So this is general structure which is observed in the clay particles, because we told that the clay particles have some charge, negative charge especially. So this side will be attracted to the face of another clay particle. One edge of the clay particle will be attracted to face of another clay particle. So that's why this kind of arrangement you would observe in the flocculated structure, right? In the undisturbed state. Now, if you give some disturbance to this, then what happens is this particles will be kind of falls into uh, this kind of formation, right? So they'll be dispersed. So this is a disturbed structure, remolded. So once you give some disturbance, once you give some alteration to the soil particles, and they'll be converted into dispersed structure, right? Okay. Dispersed flaky soil particles are in as shown in the figure. So this is what we have explained already. Now, when it comes to mineralogy, minerals, the second part of our this lecture is mineralogy, right? Clay mineralogy. So now, if you observe sands and gravels, they mostly have some small minerals, which consists of minerals, right? If it is material, then this will be formed by atoms, atoms into molecules, molecules into minerals, and then the salts, right? So the minerals are like quartz and feldspar. You can also add one more, which is mica. And not just mica, there are so many minerals which will be forming these coarse grained soils, right? But the thing is, we don't study about the minerals of the sand and minerals of gravel. We mostly study about minerals of clays, you mineral study of clays. The reason being, the minerals in the clay, they will alter the behavior of clay soil. But the minerals in sands and gravels, they don't do much job. Whatever the mineral that is existing in the sands and gravels, they behave similar if the particle sizes are similar. Right? That's why we don't study much about these minerals in the sands and gravels, but we study the mineral study of clays is so important. That's why we mentioned as clay minerals. Right? So the minerals in the clays, knowing about the minerals in the clays is so important. Right? Not just clay, even in the rocks also this mineral study is important. But as of now, that is not our discussion. You would observe in geology part. Okay. Now, if you look at this, the minerals, so you have to look at to micro scale, you know. So in the micro scale, see basically, you clay means it's formed of aluminum, silica and aluminum. So some part of silica which will be existing in this form, SiO4, and aluminum, or AlOH twice. So this both of this will be existing in some manner. So this is the SiO4, you know. So the central at the central of this trapezium you have silicon ion which is bonded with four oxygen atoms in this case. Right? So three oxygen atoms form a base and one will be at the apex. Right? And this kind of silicon tetrahedrons are arranged side by side. Now you will have one more silica atom here. Okay, I'll draw here one more silica, and we have one more oxygen here, one more oxygen here, and another oxygen here. Now this oxygen here uh, will be bonding with this silicon also, you know. So this will form a kind of yeah. Okay. So this will be one more tetrahedron, you know. This will be one more tetrahedron. Likewise, this oxygen also will be involved with one more silica here, another oxygen atom, another oxygen atom here, and one more at the apex. Right. So likewise, this kind of silica sheets are arranged one to the another, and if you look at macro scale, uh, then they look like this sheet. You know, so here you have one silicon and one more silicon and one more silicon. So this is what we call silica sheet. One layer of silicon compounds, right? So this is what we call silica sheet. And we told that the aluminum is also existing in the soil, right? So this is the aluminum, and these are OH minus ions, hydroxyl ions. Uh, so this looks like an octahedral, 8 sides, 8 faces, right? So this looks like an octahedral. Now the same octahedral units will be arranging side to side, side to side, and they'll form a sheet something like this, rectangular sheet. Here, if you observe previous thing, this is a slant face, right? Tetrahedral. So that is what observed here, and you'll have one more tetrahedron at the end. So that is also having this slant face. So that's what here. So this is trapezoidal sheet, right? Silica sheet is a trapezoidal sheet, but that formed with aluminum. This is kind of looks like a rectangle. So this is what we call Gibbsite sheet. So if the central atom is alumina, this sheet is called Gibbsite sheet. And sometimes in place of alumina, you will be having magnesium also, right? Uh, so if the magnesium is present here, then we call that sheet as Bouchard sheet. So magnesium sheet is called as Bouchard sheet. But mostly you have aluminum here, right? Okay. Uh, so So this is about the minerals. Now, I mean, the micro scale arrangement of silicon and aluminum. So this uh, silica sheet and this gibbsite sheet arranged in certain manner, and they'll form different minerals. So we'll talk about the minerals in the soil now. So these are the three minerals that we generally observe. See, the thing is, the minerals in the clays are so many. Instead of this, you have hematite, you have vermiculite, you have smectite, so many, even in the thousands, right? But the thing is, all the minerals will be similar to either one of these three, right? So that's why we study only these three minerals. So kaolite, montmorillonite, and illite. These are the three minerals which we need to study in the clay mineralogy, right? Okay, we'll see what is this clay, montmorillonite, and illite. So this is the kaolite, So this is aluminum sheet, as we told, gibbsite sheet. This sheet, yeah, this sheet. So this sheet consists of this units, continuous aluminum units. This is gibbsite sheet, and below that it has uh, the silica sheet. So this gibbsite sheet and silica sheet are arranged in this way. This is gibbsite sheet and this is silica sheet. So they stack one over the other, and these two sheets are bonded by hydrogen bonds. You know, uh, so there is a bond between these two sheets, right? So this is bonded by hydrogen bonds. So this OH ions in gibbsite sheet and oxygen ions in silica sheet, they will be, participated in a bond which is hydrogen bond. You know, if you do know about the chemical bonding, you would know about the hydrogen bond. This is not actually the strongest bond. The ionic bond is the strongest bond, and then covalent bond. But this is also kind of a covalent bond only, hydrogen bond, but it's a little bit of different. There will be one side more and one side less, not equal sharing and all. Okay, so comparatively, this will be, better bonding than your secondary bonds like van der Waals forces and all, right? So that's why hydrogen bonds are kind of a better bond strength. So it will not be easily it will not be easy to break the soil particles, right? So that's why these are kind of stable compared to other minerals. So this kaolite minerals are stable. So stable by mean what? So they don't expand under saturation and they don't shrink under drying. Now the thing is, if you have soil here, if you give water to the soil, right? Generally, what happens is the soil will be increased in its volume. Soil will be increased in its volume. But this increase in its volume is pretty less when you have more kaolite in that clay, right? If you have other minerals, then the shrinkage and swelling process, the water absorption process will be more, right? We'll see that later. So this is about the kaolite. Now, if you look at the montomorolite, this looks something looks like this. This is the montomorolite units. So this central unit is gibbsite aluminum sheet, which is sandwiched between two silica sheets. This is one silica sheet here. This is one more silica sheet here. So this total unit is bonding this way. You know? So these two units are bonded by having a water in between. So there will be some water which comes in between these two units. So now, if you give water to this soil, then this gap between these two units will be more. It will get increased, right? So that's why this is most active mineral out of all the and this yeah these units are bonded by van der Waals forces, so which are weakest. So this is bonded by van der Waals forces which are weakest, so it will be easily break. So if you give some polar liquid to the soil, then it will be completely changed its formation. You know, so that's why this mud. If you observe the mud, if you add water to it, that mud will be kind of becomes into paste, right? So this is the reason because of it, because the water absorption capacity of this soil, which is having more montomorolite, will be more. As a result of it, the soil will be subjected to more swelling and more shrinkage if it is added water or if you remove water from the soil. If you add water, it will swell, I mean increase in its volume. If you remove water, it will shrink. Right? So this is montomorolite. So the next mineral illite. So this comes in between these two, kaolite and montomorolite. Right? So here also you have secondary van der Waals forces only. But instead of water, so in montomorolite you have water here, right? So now instead of water you have potassium ions in the illite mineral. So this potassium ions try to keep these minerals, keep these two units together. They'll try to keep these two units together. So it will be a little bit of better bonding than montomorolite. So that's why it is a kind of less susceptible to shrinkage and swelling than montomorolite. But it will be obviously more active than uh, kaolite. Right? So this is the sequence. So activity means uh, how much I mean plastic plasticity is shown by the soil, and this swelling potential, how much it will be bulging with the addition of water. So these are all kind of one related to the other. We'll define all these properties later. So the thing is, this montomolate have more of all these properties, and then illite and then kaolite. So that's why if you have montomolate in the clay, most part of it, then this will be subjected to more swelling. Right? Yeah. So that is about this clay minerals. So now one more thing we need to discuss, which is this diffuse double layer. Now, if you particles are sandy particles, then they don't have generally any charge, because of larger particle size and all. Now, if your soil is clay particle, then generally it will have negative charge on them. So the clay particle will have the negative charge on it. So let's say this is your clay particle. So it will have negative charge on the surface. So there will be positive charge at the center, right? So this negative charge attracts the positive ions of water, right? Uh, then the water will be stick to the surface of your uh, clay particle, right? And this again attracts one more layer of water, negative and positive ions of water. So this is one layer, and this is another layer. So these two layers of water are called diffuse double layer. So this diffuse double layer is this water adsorbed to the, stick to the clay particles. And one more thing here is this attraction between the water and the soil particles keep on reducing with its distance from the clay particle. Right here, the force is more, attraction force, and it will be reduced continuously as its distance increases. Right, so that's why only small portion of water which is close to the clay particle will be attracted to the clay particles. So this is what we call diffuse double layer, and this water is also termed as adsorbed water. This is adsorbed water. We'll discuss the types of water that is presenting in the soil even later. Okay, this is about this diffuse double layer. Okay, we have completed the module 1, right? So I know this so far it is kind of dry, but the thing is you need to know about all these things uh, to understand better way the latter parts of your subject, right? So that's why you have to spend at least some time on this thing. But generally the questions were not asked from this part so far in the last 2 3 years, right? So but there were questions which asked earlier, so we never know, because it's a gate, like you have to be prepared for all the things. So you have to go with these all, at least know the things, right? Okay, so here we have some questions. I've picked up some questions for you. So do one thing. You just read the question and try to answer it by yourself. Pause the lecture and try to answer it by yourself. Right? Okay. So when the product of rock weathering is so transported as a sediment but remains in place, it is called. Okay, you can answer it. And the next question is, aeolian soils are residual soils, wind deposits, gravity deposits, and water deposits. Uh, okay, you can pause it and answer it. Uh, so the answer is wind deposit. And for the previous question, the answer was okay, in place, right? They are not transported; they are rest in place. So that means it's a residual soil. So lacustrine soils. So lacustrine soils means they are deposited in lake beds. So this is the right answer. They are deposited in lake beds. Okay, I guess there's something wrong. It's happened to my pen. Okay, fine. Lowest we told that this is wind deposit. Lowest is wind deposit of uniform particle size. Okay, where we have the option. Okay, deposits of wind. So this is 3, and peat. We know that this is organic soil. Okay, this is 4, and alluvial soil. Alluvial soils are deposited in rivers. So deposit from suspension in running water. Yeah, option 1. So alluvial soil is related to option 1. And this marl is a marine soil, as we mentioned. Okay, deposits of marine 2. So which is the correct option? 3, 4, 2, 1. So this is the correct option. A, option A is correct. So the correct sequence of plasticity of minerals in a soil, right? We told that plasticity is more for montmorillonite, right? So it will be less for illite and kaolite. Okay, we'll see the options. So montmorillonite, uh, increasing order, so which is having lesser plasticity. Here we have silica, you know. Silica is not even clay. So generally the plasticity is observed in clays, right? So silica doesn't have any plasticity. So it will be least plastic. So option A or B. And now if you observe the second mineral, that is kaolite and kaolite here. But here it is illite, here it is montmorillonite. But montmorillonite is generally having more plasticity than illite, right? So this option is wrong, and this is the correct option. So the predominant mineral responsible for shrinkage and swelling in black cotton soils is montmorillonite. Black cotton soils are a kind of residual soils formed by some volcanic ash, right? So which is having plenty of montmorillonite. That's why they'll be experiencing more swelling and shrinkage, right? So this is what montmorillonite. So these are the type of soils that you can generally observe in your paddy fields. You know, if you give water, then there will be look behaves different, and if you remove water from the soil, that will be different. So which will be generally better for agricultural reasons. This black cotton type of soils, but for the construction purpose, these are very bad. You know, so you can't keep your constructions on this kind of soils, but it will be useful for cultivation. So yeah, so this is our second lecture. Okay, we are done with the first module, and we'll see. We'll jump into the next properties of soils in the next module, and so it will be fun from the next class onwards. No much theory. Generally, in the gate, like you can expect more of numerical type of questions. I mean, aptitude type of question. They test you your application skills, but they don't test you more for how much you know, right? Uh, so that's why you have to be more focused on application. I'm not saying that you shouldn't remember the theory and you should keep up the things in your mind, but you should give more time to your application parts, right? Okay, fine.